Answer my fucking question. What's fucking bigoted? You love to ostracize someone. Anyone that says anything wrong, you're fucking straight on them. No, you can't be saying that. Shame, 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 shame. Anyway, okay, we've got some queer slop. I don't know how much of this I will watch either because it's called Can Men Get Periods? And I suspect this is like unironic. So I don't know, we're gonna see what this is all about. I need to watch more like queer content because I really don't know what it is people watch. You know, like those kind of queer people that want to watch stuff that's all like affirming. I have no idea what any of that stuff's like because I've never really watched any of it. Like I've never been super into it, and like nowadays where it completely eludes me, I haven't seen anything in like years. But what I have seen is usually like boring as fuck. So I don't know. We'll see how we get on this. So let's see if men can get periods.
How are you menstruating in the apocalypse?
How are you menstruating?
100%.
I wasn't ready to be a menstruating man yet. And by calling it a women's issue, we are once again reasserting menstruation is for women. Because of course I am nothing but a little fish in this big pond of gender.
Obviously I was PMSing. I'm crying.
I mean, I'm sure that guy is aware that he was born female. I don't know. I hope so.
In this line.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Queer Collective podcast. I'm your host, Carbon.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Elgin.
And welcome to the show. And this episode is presented by Vizzy Hard Seltzer, but more on that later.
Get ready to challenge the status quo with us today as we are diving headfirst.
These people are challenging the status quo. Just so we're aware. Just so you can see this challenge to the status quo going on right here.
First into the question, are periods solely a woman's issue? Join the conversation as we explore the often overlooked world of trans menstruation. From unraveling the mysterious history of menstruation to empowering you with ways to degender your menstrual vocabulary, we're covering it all. Plus, we'll be sharing personal insights into the trans menstruation experience and shedding light on the critical intersections of period poverty. And stay tuned for a special shout out to this episode's partners, the Period Purse, who are on a mission to make a difference with their It's Your Period campaign, aiming to promote menstrual health and equity by providing period products and education across Canada.
And our guest today is Elgin Petsiak.
A Canadian. So yeah, it's gonna be like super woke. I appreciate, but hey.
Is he, him pronouns. He's a settler and a second-generation queer trans male researcher. He's finishing up his PhD at the University of Ottawa in feminist and gender studies on the topic of reproductive technology use among transgender and gender-diverse AFAB folks. Elgin is an ally and advocate who has researched, published, and spoken internationally on menstrual equity, histories of sterilization, and intimate partner violence against transgender and gender-diverse individuals. Elgin, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, folks.
Our first question for you, really setting the stage. Why is
Oh my god, folks.
this conversation important for everyone to listen to?
Folks is a dog whistle.
And not just people who menstruate.
You know, I get this in a lot of different spaces when we're talking about reproductive and sexual health care. It applies to all of us, not only because, of course, many folks menstruate, but also for the fact of many of us need folks to menstruate. Menstruation is a really important part of
drinking game. Every time they say folks, I would do that, but I've only got water and there's not much point.
reproduction. It's a part of how we often create life. In the queer community, it's really important too, because I've heard queer cis men make comments about, this doesn't apply to me, this doesn't impact me. Well, you know, many queer cis men are actually in relationships with trans and non-binary folks who are menstruating.
What's a queer cis man? I don't understand.
Queer identifying cis men will also want to have children in the future. And the reproductive and sexual health care of the person that will carry their child is also really important to think about. Like anything else, it's an everybody issue.
That really ties into our next question, where we're wondering why are periods such an elusive and also invisibilized experience, and kind of like tying into that historic piece there.
There's lots of different ways that menstruation is really, really elusive and invisible, but also very visible. There's this idea of we talking about bodily waste. So especially when it comes to, I think, AFAB bodies and feminized bodies, is we talk about certain things being a waste. Urine's a waste. When we get sick, that's a waste. Our saliva is a waste. Things that come out of our body are considered wastes. And I feel like menstrual blood has been really flung onto that as well. It's considered waste. If we go back into history, getting your period was actually considered a waste of a period because you were not therefore pregnant. So we think about it as a waste, either in terms of a waste of bodily function or a waste of a viable pregnancy. So historically, it's interesting because the second someone gets their period, they're like, okay, you're a woman now.
Right.
Now you're of reproductive age in a time when, you know, we didn't live for very long. I also think there's kind of this hyper visibility that comes with when you get your period once again. It's now hyper visible because you're a woman. It's visible physically in many ways, and it's also very symbolic in Western society because it's, okay, now you're able to become pregnant and you're able to engage in marriage often and journey into womanhood and what's supposedly motherhood as well.
Yeah.
And so at that moment when you get your period,
What's supposedly motherhood? I mean, it's not like they're saying stuff that's like wrong or whatever. It's just, they just use a weird language for it, I guess. I don't know.
it's hyper visible. Mothers cry, fathers automatically sometimes step away and they're like, okay, like this isn't for me anymore. You know, they all of a sudden sometimes get disconnected from their children as well because they're like, menstruation is such a foreign thing, especially among cisgender men.
Could you even say like it would tie into the daughter's like sexualization as well?
Absolutely.
Which is weird because you get it as a child. But I feel like that is also a reason why dads maybe like are like, ugh.
I gotta ask, menstruation is it just a thing that's alien to cisgender men? It's like pretty alien to me. I have no idea what having a period is like, but I don't know.
Absolutely, because it ties in the form of this person can be a sexual being now, right? But when it comes to the invisibility of it, I find it's invisible.
What I'm getting at is like using this language so much and like especially sort of trying to find ways of putting certain things onto like certain groups. They have either slip ups or kind of moments of the mask slipping. I'm not sure which to attribute it to, you know.
Visible for certain folks. It's really made to be invisible for many remote communities, many different BIPOC folks, so Black, Indigenous, people of color. Many folks don't think about the impacts that menstruation have on the day-to-day lives of many folks, especially, you know, in the global south or in remote parts of Canada where there's literally no access to menstrual products. And it's made invisible when it comes to trans and non-binary folks and folks that are incarcerated. We don't promote menstrual equity for those folks as much as we need to. We think about
the folks is like starting to drive me mad. Now that I've noticed it, it's like, oh my God.
menstruation and periods when it's, oh, look, you're a woman now. But when it's this person is suffering from reproductive and sexual inequality because of lack of access, that's when it becomes invisible. Those are the things we don't want to see. And, you know, those things become invisible until the moment where they're made hyper visible by the government. Talking about children and talking about the rights of trans and non-binary folks will be like, getting a period is a normal part of a girl's life. Why aren't transmasculine folks and trans boys getting them? Why are we putting them on hormone blockers? Why aren't we letting the body do its natural process? It is very much still taught as this is a woman's issue. This is something you do not need to talk to your dad about it. You do not need about the rights of trans and non-binary folks. They'll be like, getting a period is a normal part of a girl's life. Why aren't transmasculine folks and trans boys getting them? Why are we putting them on hormone blockers? Why aren't we letting the body do its natural process? It is very much still taught as this is a woman's issue. This is something you do not need to talk to your dad about it. You do not need to talk to the men in your life about it. It's something that people should be disgusted by. It's something that you need to keep secret, especially in pop culture. The ultimate shame that people have is when they have period leaks. You're expected to just manage it on your own in private.
In TV shows or movies or whatever the case, especially when it's like long dragged out, like The Walking Dead, that's literally like 10 seasons long. And throughout the whole 10 seasons, apparently not one person menstruates. In my mind, oh.
Who thinks about that? That's so weird. You're watching this like long ass, like tense thing, and it's like you're expecting at some point one of the characters is just going to be like, I have my period. Like, come on. It's so weird. Fuck me.
Always goes to like, how are you menstruating in the apocalypse? How are you menstruating?
100%.
Your pants look, I mean, they look dirty, but they don't look bloody.
The folks that are scavenging for...
How often do you see their pants in these shows? That's, I don't know. Aren't we to assume there's bits that you don't see on screen? They're probably doing half the boring shit during those. I don't know.
Resources, not grabbing as many boxes of hygiene products as they can. And why haven't we talked about, you know, menstrual blood and the attraction of zombies?
You know, I didn't think of that. That's why you have the degrees. Yeah.
This is why I will somehow manage to survive the zombie apocalypse.
I also feel like a huge piece of this too is the shame that's like being brought on us, especially like it being only a woman's issue. It really encourages people not to talk about it. It really leads us dealing with abnormal levels of pain and not realizing it's abnormal. Dealing with my own reproductive health issues of like cysts, endometriosis. I went for so long with even like doctors telling me like this is normal. Now getting into a position where I feel more empowered and I'm researching things on my own and I'm like, okay, 1 in like 8 menstruators have endometriosis. Or like,
I'm having a why the fuck am I listening to this moment. I just can't imagine telling everyone about my every problem like this, I guess. Like if I was a actual gal and I had like period issues, I can't imagine sitting here on stream and like talking about it and like telling the world about it. I don't know. I'll watch a bit more, but like this is not, most of it's just like kind of boring. It's like, yeah, I guess this is true. We're talking about whether we can see whether there should be bits where there's periods in The Walking Dead or whatever. It's a bit preposterous.
These different kinds of issues, and yet there's like so little funding for it. So little people are talking about it. There's so many ways that it actually harms us to continue perpetuating this level of shame.
There are so many
ways in which it harms us, such as
things that come along with the stereotypes of menstruation that just do not get addressed, and the naturalization
such as
of menstrual pain is among them. They want folks to really think about their fertility at young ages, think about reproduction, but they don't want to actually take care of folks who have uteruses and their reproductive health.
Who's they? Okay, this is starting to get a bit weird now. They're starting to say a lot of things in quick succession where it's like, Wait, I don't know about that.
So there's all this expectation to reproduce without any of the support.
What's the I don't know. I don't know. Never mind. I don't know what expectation is put on us to reproduce. Like, I don't know what pressures people in fucking modern day Canada are being put under to make sure they're continuing their bloodlines.
The reproductive care of white women is prioritized. White cis straight women is prioritized because there's this idea that they should reproduce, you know, once they have an education and they're married.
Where's the source for like any of this? They're not going to say, are they? This is going to start annoying me. As soon as I say it's like boring, it starts getting a bit dicey.
It's time to reproduce. It's time to have kids. It's time to like live that suburban life.
It's time.
But you see that in the much higher death rates of BIPOC pregnancies and births specifically. To dive further into this conversation, I think we're
not going to like go into that like more. We're not going to go into that more deeply or anything, I'm sure. I don't know. Like, thinking about it probably depends on like living in certain areas like poverty and stuff like that. There probably is a problem, but I don't know. I never know what these people are like actually alluding to because they're just kind of spouting off a load of things, you know.
The important piece for us to start with is around language and degendering menstruation. So I'm wondering if you can bring our listeners up to speed and let us know how someone can specifically degender their vocabulary around menstruation. Like what
Degender their vocabulary. Like, why are we still bothering with this shit, man? This is from a month ago. Who cares about like, I don't know. Who cares about like speaking in a non-gendered way? Like, what does it matter? So you're including the 0.1%, if not less, of trans men that get pregnant or like have periods or whatever, because it's not even all of them, you know.
words are out, what words are in.
Things to be really mindful of. Biology and science are both highly gendered. We talk about science as being fact, but the reality is someone came up with this idea. What's really important to think about is how do we remove this gendering?
Wait, is that... Hang on. I need that again. Like, this is starting to get good now. Hang on.
Being fact, but the reality is someone came up with this idea.
Science is highly gendered, and gender is regarded as fact, but the fact is someone actually came up with this idea. That's stupid. Like, sex is sex is indisputably a part of, like, your life, because you're either male or female, and a male and a female had to come together to make you in the first place. You're just choosing to not associate with your sex because you don't like it, it seems. But I don't know. I'd love to know more, but these people are not necessarily these people in question. But a lot of these, like, more non-binary trans kind of people are really shit at, like, educating anyone. And that, like, isn't, like, not their... They don't need to educate anyone. Well, that's fine, but no one's going to understand. And no one's going to take it seriously. So, I don't know.
What's really important to think about is how do we remove this gendering from even the biological processes? The ways that we can start to...
From even the biological processes. So, like... There's obviously a reason why science uses these terms, you know, the fact that we're mammals and mammals have a male and a female that come together to make a baby. Like, there's a reason why. You're cutting all of that out, but not really giving a reason why. And I'm sure there's a lot of, like, biological issues that only actually apply to males or females that you could be, like... You could be making unclear, you could be muddying the waters on because you're insisting on this, like, gender neutral language. Like, why? So you're not offending the small amount of people that have this thing? I don't really understand.
Doing that is beginning at square one. Don't use gender-based language. One that I've heard used and I've used before is like menstruators, people who menstruate, people who have periods. Take this...
Menstruators. Sounds like an incel. Like, fuck off, you menstruator.
Same type of allyship and advocacy-based approach as you would with person-first language. So really make it about a person and then a biological process. Anytime I think of the word woman, and I'm guilty for it, so really make it who have periods. Take the same language. One that I've heard used and I've used before is like menstruators, people who menstruate, people who have periods.
People who menstruate, people who have periods. Hey, people who have periods. Like, this is stupid. Like, why? I don't understand what the need for any of this is. Oh my god. Like, I'm sorry that you're not the same as most people in that you identify as a man, but you were born a female, so you get periods. Like, I'm sorry that means that you're accessing, like, feminine-based stuff when you don't feel feminine or whatever it is, but, like, it is what it is. You know why you get periods, and you know why that is associated with women. Why not just like, excuse me, why not just accept that? It seems a lot easier than trying to make the world like get more gender neutral, which it seems to be resisting, unfortunately.
The same type of allyship and advocacy-based approach as you would with first and first language. So really make it about a person and then a biological process. Anytime I think of the word woman, and I'm guilty for it myself, because of course I am nothing but a little fish in this big pond of gender, you think, oh, people who menstruate. I find that if you practice makes perfect.
What about when we're speaking about...
So just force yourself into saying gender neutral language. Imagine all the things you could be doing with your time. Literally anything. I appreciate that I'm a hypocrite, like massively for this, seeing as what I'm doing, but like, I don't know, this is just all pointless. Like, why are you spending your time like worrying about this shit and not like anything else? I mean, I know why these people do it. They get paid like a small amount. They've got 1.3k views on this, so hey.
About things on a biological level, especially if you're getting into like the nitty gritty of a conversation on your reproductive health. Often people will say like female organs. Is there another way to talk about it?
Every person, especially when it comes to
female organ. Well, you are, as far as I can tell, they're all female. Like there's a sex term. Like I don't know. They're just pretending it doesn't exist and be like, let's pretend that male and female is like nothing, and it's just randomly some people have dicks, some people have vaginas, and whatever. You know, like. This is like childish. I'd have thought this would be like educating me, but it's just pretending that the sex that they are is not anything. Fuck, how do I put this? They just seem like they're pretending their sex doesn't matter. I don't know.
Trans and non-binary folks is going to have the language that works for them. Personally, if you were to call me a person with ovaries, I would be okay with that. But other folks might.
Person with ovaries. That's it. When my partner comes home later, I'm going to go, hello, person with ovaries, and see how she takes it. And I'll get back to you on that one, champ, okay? Oh, I regret saying that this was going to get boring, because this is like fucking wild. Like, what are these people? What are they on? Person with ovaries. I'd rather, instead of just saying females or whatever, people with ovaries. I mean... what that shit that the TERFs talk about when it comes to like woman erasure, where it's like they're using dehumanizing language, like reducing us to body parts, and then this person's literally like, I'd be fine with being called a person with ovaries. It's like, aren't you just doing like exactly what they say that you're doing? Oh, I'm just gonna carry on because I'm gonna get stuck on this point forever. Oh my god.
Might not be. For healthcare practitioners or professionals, ask the person if it's important to the conversation.
How would you like me to refer to you today? Like, oh, come on. Do you think they don't have more shit to do? Like, aren't doctors like super oversubscribed at the moment? Like, they've always got their hands full with something or other. I mean, it's almost impossible to get a doctor's appointment where I live. So I don't know. But like, yeah, let's waste valuable time making sure that I don't call the person a woman when they're not a woman. It's like, they're going to make assumptions. Just correct them if they're wrong and hope that they refer to you as what you said instead. I don't know. What can you expect from the average normal person that just doesn't know about this kind of thing? And let's be real, isn't watching this kind of thing. Instead, the people watching this kind of thing, are people like me. I'm not a fucking doctor. I'm not doing anything. You know what I'm saying? But like, I just don't see the point. I'm not sure why this is like so necessary to some people. And this whole thing is what has like swept through like trans communities. So fuck, you know, I have to deal with it whether I like it or not, you know, if I'm gonna interact with people online, which I pretty much don't anyway.
Don't recommend going around to all your friends and asking them what they want to call their reproductive systems. But if you're in a conversation where someone's talking to you about it and that's important for the conversation, you can say, oh, well, what terms do you like to use? Everybody's got different words for things, and it's all based.
At what point do we think language is going to get to a place where anytime you discuss anything, you have to start by being like, well, what about this term? I need to know what you think, what your perception of this term is. And then like, what term do you use for this thing? And then like, like building a fucking glossary or something before you even start talking about something. That's what it feels like it's coming towards. I still don't see the point. Like, has no one taught them? Like, they must have been out in the world and, like, dealt with people and stuff. Even if that's just ordering a fucking Starbucks and actually going out for it instead of getting it on Just Eat or whatever. I don't know.
On their comfort level and what they feel they identify with. And when we also talk about the female reproductive system, there's so much historical devaluing. By degendering these things, we take away the privilege that gender holds, which is a really big one.
In your opinion?
We take away the privilege that the gender holds, and then they lean forward, like, oh, that's a really good, oh yeah, didn't think about that. Okay, bro, sure.
Should we still be using terms like female and male when speaking in these kinds of like biological senses?
I think it's really hard because it's hard to name things without using systems. Speaking from my own personal lived experience, the easiest way for me to tell someone what my reproductive needs is by saying, I was born female. I was assigned female at birth. However, it could be just as easily.
But just accept it though. Like, yeah, you were born female. Like, isn't that just easier? Just accept it. Just accept what you are and that you're like bucking a norm or whatever, but that's all it really is, you know?
I was born with a uterus. A lot of folks find AFAB and AMAB, assigned female at birth and assigned male at birth, better than previous ones of F to M and M to F, female.
Yeah, like to me, being trans is being F to M or M to F. Like all the other stuff, like you're just kind of coming up with an identity and saying this is what I am, and then maybe using certain parts of gender transition as like body modification or something to get you closer to that ideal of yourself or whatever. But that's just, you know, what am I trying to say here? Like, it's contentious enough saying that you were born male, but you want to be female, and then like changing certain things about yourself. Like, that's contentious enough because people have only got your word for it that you're trans. But then, and like, at least you generally will show like commitment to it by having those surgeries and by, you know, wearing certain clothes, like making certain like quite long-term aesthetic choices, shit like that. But like when you're not going from male to female or female to male, then you're just kind of, you were born one way, but you're just pretending to be something else. I'm not sure. I'm like trying to understand, but these people always just put it in the most vague terms possible. And it's like, this is all just accepted knowledge. And it's like, well, I don't speak your language, I'm afraid. You're gonna need to like explain some of this shit to me because I'm older and I can't see how being trans has anything to do with being a fucking attack helicopter or autism gender or some shit. Like that seems like it's something else. And I'm not against like gendered language. Like I actually want to be gendered the way that I want to be, you know? So, you know, to conflate these things and then to just gloss over like clear differences where some people don't want to have like gendered language used and some people do. It's like, well, you're pushing for getting rid of it though. So you're also excluding the people that do want to be gendered a certain way. And that includes plenty of so-called like cis people, you know? I'm trying to get out of using cis, but I can't think of another like word. I don't want to use like normal or something, but yeah, I don't know. This whole thing is like swept through like trans communities and it's crazy to me. I don't even know what the fuck it's supposed to be. And they won't really like explain it. It's just like, oh, just believe people when they say that they're a thing. It's like, okay, well, I'm an attack helicopter then. Cool, thanks.
Male to male, male to female, those are very outdated because it assumes that everyone that is assigned female at birth who is a trans or non-binary person is actually going to transition into a man like myself. But we have so many awesome, cool folks that are like in between the different realms and
awesome, cool folks.
So for the moment, medically, AFAB and AMAB are helpful, but I think in the long term, it would be better for us to create a new system.
With that, what are your thoughts on periods and reproductive healthcare being categorized as women's issues?
I think when we categorize something as a women's issue, I think it's the exact same thing as categorizing race as not being a white person's issue. To say it's a women's issue is very much a second wave, white, liberal, feminist agenda. When we talk
This person presumably wasn't alive for any of that. He looks about 16.
About it being a women's issue, who are we forgetting? And by calling it a women's issue,
well, they're not forgetting anyone because you were still born female. You just don't identify as a woman, but you surely can link that in your brain and be like, well, that's something that I still need. It's a woman's thing. Women are typically adult females. I'm also an adult female. I get periods. I probably need that particular woman's thing. Maybe what I need is some stuff from the women's and some stuff for the men's. Like, what's wrong with that? You buy women's sanitary products and you buy male clothes. Like, isn't that gender fuck? Isn't that the whole shit that you're after anyway? So like, who cares?
We are once again reasserting menstruation is for women, and that is a part of white supremacy. By saying that as a woman, you struggle with menstruation does not take away a piece of the pie from trans and non-binary folks who menstruate. Me saying I'm a person who can menstruate as a trans person doesn't take away a piece of the pie from you. We have been taught to believe that my inclusion has to be categorizing race as not being a white person's issue. To say it's a women's issue is very much a second wave white liberal feminist agenda. When we talk about it being a women's issue, who are we forgetting? And by calling it a women's issue, we are once again reasserting menstruation is for women, and that is a part of white supremacy.
It's a part of white supremacy. I love it. I love it. I love it. Do I generally struggle with ambiguity, or is it only within the realm of gender that you find it disturbing and unsettling? I mean, I prefer that stuff isn't ambiguous. I'm slightly autistic, which it's weird that so many of these kind of people claim that they're autistic and yet are the most ambiguous people ever. I don't find it disturbing and unsettling. I just don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me. And when I watch stuff to try and educate myself more, their takes on this kind of stuff are the most like surface level things where they just kind of spit out a bunch of like sound bites and stuff, like the kind of shit you'll see on Twitter. And like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And like this whole non-binary thing like swept through like trans communities. And if you had any kind of misgivings, even if it was civil or whatever like that, you still got like absolutely shat on. So it's just bizarre to me. I'd have thought it would like make more sense than this, but so far it's just, well, I identify as this instead. It's like, what does that mean to even do? You know? I don't know. Just some actual, like, when everything's ambiguous, it just makes it seem like nothing. Does that make sense? Sure, but they are talking in broad strokes because otherwise they'd have to center someone's particular experience, which would be quite uncomfortable for them, you know? Well, yeah, but then the broad strokes are just like, well, what does that even mean? Like, it just becomes nonsense. It was I identify with once. Yeah, whenever I said stuff like identify as female, I meant it more metaphorically, but it seems like it's very literal now. I'm just, you know, I'm not like against the idea that gender identity exists, although I just think people have a self-identity and that's all there is to it. But I don't know. I'm gonna keep watching and keep thinking, I guess.
By saying that as a woman, you struggle with menstruation does not take away a piece of the pie from trans and non-binary folks who menstruate. Me saying I'm a person who can menstruate as a trans person doesn't take away a piece of the pie from you. We have been taught to believe that my inclusion has to be at your expense.
Well, yeah, you can just say that, like, I'm trans and I also menstruate. Cool, okay, fine. I don't know what the problem is. It's still gonna get referred to as a women's issue because it's overwhelmingly a women's issue. That's just kind of how it is. Like, you look at how people talk about, like, domestic abuse, and overwhelmingly they'll talk about it as, like, a male-on-female issue, but that's not always the case, you know? But it's how it is, you know? You can't every time someone talks about something in a way in which it mostly acknowledges the majority, you can't every single time be like, oh, well, what about us? We're still there. It's like, well, you know, we can't bog down every single conversation like that. And when it comes to trans men specifically with the period thing, well, it's like there's a very easy, obvious answer. It's because you were born female. That's why you have the periods.
And that's not the way it works.
It definitely exists, but before transsexuals were who they are, not how they feel. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, fuck. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell what thing is what, you know, what's who I am and what's how I feel. But I don't know. I'm still on my journey or whatever. Like, ultimately, even if I woke up one day and decided that the whole trans thing is completely bullshit, like, I'm here now, you know, I had my surgery a long time ago and I'm fine, you know, my life's okay, you know. I can live with who I am and stuff. I don't look terrible, so it's fine, but hey.
A lot of people see it as a pie and you're sharing a piece of the pie, and the people who are privileged right now are getting a massive piece of the pie, and they get
Who are we talking about?
scared that
they get that way when it's like, let's change the language so it includes more people but reduces you to your body parts, if you know what I mean. Because that's what a lot of these people are saying, like these like TERF types, and they're like literally doing it for them by saying, I would be fine being called a person with ovaries, you know?
Yeah.
When they start slicing.
The best thing about her predicament was not having periods. Yeah, yeah, definitely. But yeah, they sound rough. I'm glad I don't have any. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I'm not gonna like. I definitely try not to lecture anyone on how they should experience their period because I'm never gonna have one. So it is what it is. It's interesting. Like, I mean, this is called can men get periods? But obviously we're talking about trans men, so we're talking about females still, are we not? You know. And it seems like a lot of this is just dancing around, like, let's just remove the concept of sex, like throw it away. Like, now how does it work? And it's like, yeah, that's fine as like a thought exercise, I guess. But then it's like, sex still exists. And the reason you have periods is because of sex, right? Being referred to by having body parts is fine in some contexts. I mean, as in being reduced to your body parts, not just having them. Medical literature, etc. When we're talking about groups of people, they're not saying that like TERFs we should call everyone females like Ferengi. I don't know who that is. Well, the TERFs have been saying, well, I don't like this gendered language like pregnant people and stuff, this non-gendered language, should I say, like pregnant people and stuff, because it's removing my gender from the equation. Or it's like, in the case of something like people with ovaries or people who menstruate, it's like they feel reduced down to their bodily functions, which is definitely like a feminist idea. So I don't know. I mean, you got to talk to some women about how they feel about this kind of language, I guess. Like, some of them like it, some of them don't. And there's an awful lot more women that menstruate than trans men that menstruate, so.
This pie up, then they get less. How can degendering menstruation still help everybody?
Absolutely.
How can we make more pies?
I think this approach can be useful for anything. You can call in other folks.
How can we make more pies? Yes. Great contribution.
When you need allyship, when you need support. I'm a person that has white privilege. I'm a white person.
We need allyship. We need people to believe every single thing we say, basically. That's what that means. He has white privilege. We're going to apologize for being white. Sure, it's language they're not used to. But the idea that it's anti-feminist to use this sort of language in medical context is balmy. Well, I don't really agree. I mean, I think women and men are like very distinct categories in lots of ways, and like being able to generalize a whole lot of things to specifically women or specifically men is probably a lot easier and faster than everything being like people that do this, people that do that, and splitting it off without sex, you know. It just makes much more sense to me to just use sex because, you know, we're mammals ultimately. You know, you can see our evolution. Easier and faster because it's the norm, right? Well, you have to demonstrate why there's a reason to change the norm, like to include trans men. Like, are there enough of them to justify that? And are there enough of them that the women that also have these kind of things, where there's significantly more of them, like that their comfort should be ignored in favor of those people? I'm making incoherent arguments. How so? Please tell me how. Demonstrate. The thing is, with some TERFs, they are happy to refer to trans women as women in social context. They just want the stuff that applies to them specifically maintained. I think with like gender criticals, that's true. I think some of the more like out there TERF types are like insane. Like, they genuinely do want to go around and like make fun of people that look like shit and stuff like that, and probably do want to erase literally everything. Like, you get those like people that declare like not 1 inch, and I kind of regard them the same way I regard like the TRAs. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know anytime about what argument I made that's incoherent.
I'm a settler. So I'm going to help other folks to refill their bottles when their bottles are getting low. If we think about it not as pie, but as bottles, when someone else needs support, it's okay for me to be like, oh, you know what? I'll give you some of mine. And we're made to think, oh, eventually there's going to be nothing left. Well, that's true.
What does this even mean? Like, fucking hell. I'm going to go back to see if I can get more context for that.
It as a pie, and you're sharing a piece of the pie, and the people who
I've heard this a million times. I know what this is. If you say that we should use men and women to designate these people because that's the norm and everyone knows what you mean, then you're being consistent. Well, no, you're not just saying it because it's the norm. It's because men and women are physically very different in many different ways. And so it would make sense to be able to categorize those differences as these being like female differences and these being male differences. So when you're talking about uteruses, when you're talking about breasts, when you're talking about a whole bunch of other female stuff, you've got that categorization. So it doesn't just make sense because it's the norm. Every other justification you're making is the incoherency because these additions aren't why you believe what you do. How do you know what I believe? Haven't we had this fucking conversation before? You don't know what I believe. That's the whole point. You like, until I have proof that people can fucking read my mind, I'm going to assume otherwise. I'm sorry.
Who are privileged right now are getting a massive piece of the pie, and they get scared that when they start slicing this pie up, then they get less. How can degendering menstruation still help everybody?
Absolutely.
How can we make more pies?
I do because you tell me what you believe, you're on a stream flapping your gums, but the only incoherence you've given me wasn't even incoherent. So like, what's your damage? It's interesting. You always like start off like you're trying to make a point or something, but as soon as I don't agree with you, it's just like, I don't know. I don't know why you keep coming back, but I don't mind. It's quite fun for me.
I think this approach can be useful for anything. You can call in other folks when you need allyship, when you need support. I'm a person that has white privilege. I'm a white person. I'm a settler. So I'm going to help other folks.
This intersectionality shit. I need to get much more into like the intersectionality shit and like focus on it specifically because I need to go way further into that shit. Like, trust me. Intersectionality is a fine idea in certain respects, but the amount which people use it completely erroneously and pointlessly and usually just to divert conversations or to stop someone from talking, like that's what it seems to mostly be there for.
To refill their bottles when their bottles are getting low. As we think about it not as pie but as bottles, when someone else needs support, it's okay for me to be like, oh, you know what, I'll give you some of mine. And we're made to think, oh, eventually there's going to be nothing left. While that's true in economic senses, that totally forgets about the fact that humans are resilient.
Oh, well, it's true in economic sense. Gotta get that in. Jesus. I have a feeling like, I mean, most of these people are like super leftist. It's like, it's a whole fucking cult, isn't it? There's a specific list of ideals that you have to have. It is what it is.
And commonly will provide emotional and psychological support to each other. If people want to reframe it as, how can I make my pie and the pie of other people's full by giving pieces to other people, then it doesn't feel like people are taking pieces from you.
Brain immediately goes to the question of, well, did you have too much to begin with? To the point where you...
So I'm going to help other folks.
I am the transsexual you'd meet back in the day. Your friend would have agreed with me. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. There's still people out there. That's the thing. Like, those of us that weren't really in the communities so much, I guess, got left behind because with these like bubbles, the fuck, what am I trying to say? The ideology like goes into overdrive and it speeds up and they speed away from the rest of society that doesn't really understand all these like concepts and stuff. And then they come back being like, well, no, we want rights now. And it's like, no one knows what the fuck any of you are talking about. And like, I'm trying to understand, like, I really am. Like, I don't do it as a bit where I kind of say at the start, you know, hey, maybe these people have a point. Like, you know, it is true. Like, I would actually like to hear some better arguments. It's just, it's just the same stuff, like restated, where it's like, I have more questions than answers, if anything. And I mean, maybe I'm expecting too much out of this video, which is about whether men can get periods, which obviously they're talking about trans men, and obviously they can. They're talking to a specific audience, people who are clued in with the lingo. They're not talking to a broader audience. So they're just talking amongst each other. Then what's the point? Like, you don't want anyone else to like regard you that way. Like, it sounds like they're very much talking about things that they'd want changing in a system. So why would they only want to talk to people just like themselves who largely aren't in these systems? They're going to have to like present this to people at some point if they want acceptance, right? Or is it not about, it's about, well, this is what we're going to do and just act like we're better than everyone else? Like, I don't understand. Like, what's the point then if they're not trying to reach a broader audience? Women used to be accepting of transsexuals. They're guilty of revision in their own way. If anything, MTFs were more the enemy of the straight male. Yeah, I can see that because, you know, transgender panic and stuff like that, which to be clear, like I was always upfront that I'm trans, like with dating and stuff. I always dated women anyway because that's just how it is for me. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like crazy shit that comes from the TERFs that I don't agree with either because they want to make it seem like every single one of us is like this burgeoning man that every single person can tell and they're just being too polite. It's like, it's practically like school bully shit, you know what I mean? Sure, but you need people on board to change things. Talking to would-be collaborators is often more effective than people who are utterly disconnected to an issue. But literally everyone except like the in-group is disconnected with this issue. Like, and it's not explaining why we need any of this kind of stuff. especially if it's nascent, especially if you want to be talking to a wider base. But you're saying it's like, it's for people who are clued in with the lingo. I don't know, like, I'm somewhat clued in with the lingo, but like, this is like, I don't even know what you're trying to fucking say, to be honest. I don't see the point. If you're talking in a way that other people aren't going to understand you, then how do you expect other people to like come in and be part of the thing, you know? It just seems like it's a continuing of the circle jerk, if anything.
To refill their bottles when their bottles are getting low. As we think about it not as pie but as bottles. When someone else needs support, it's okay for me.
What is known as the trans men were insanely violent, because steroids used as treatment set them off. Oh, yeah. Did they still use the same thing then, or? One made a transvestite lazy eye after getting mad one night. Oof. Yeah, I don't know if, I guess, maybe they use a different, because I know like taking testosterone, they can't do that and then still enter in sports, because that's basically juicing.
To be like, oh, you know what, I'll give you some of mine. And we're made to think, oh, eventually there's going to be nothing left. While that's true in economic senses, that totally forgets about the fact that humans are resilient.
Do I think academia is a circle jerk? I don't think most academia is on YouTube. Considering they have conversations that your person off the street couldn't readily participate in. Well, I don't know that I see this as like academia. I see this as entertainment. And it's like, what, for queer people to listen to so they can, or like allies and stuff like that, so they can improve their language to be less gendered. But like, why? But like, what's the point? You're including like a handful of people, like, sure. But like, it comes across like they're trying to throw out the idea of sex altogether, which is complete nonsense. Like, why would you do that? That's what I'm getting from this. I think it's slightly different. FTM treatment was newer. Never mastered men looking like women. That's easy. Men's men were more of a lottery. Oh, yeah. I think I get you.
And commonly will provide emotional and psychological support to each other. If people want to reframe it as, how can I make my pie and the pie of other people's full by giving pieces to other people, then it doesn't feel like people are taking pieces from you.
Brain immediately goes to the question of, well, did you have too much to begin with?
I still don't know what they're talking, like, who are they talking about that is complaining that a bit of their pie is being taken away? I guess they're talking about people who, you know, will say things like, well, pregnant people is erasing to women, but they're just doing the same thing that you're doing when you're saying that something's erasing to you, you know? I don't know. I just don't see the point. Like what's the point in any of this?
To the point where you were full and you had still so much left and it was just kind of going to waste.
I think too, you can look at it in a socialist versus capitalist viewpoint as well.
Oh God, this is gonna trigger me so hard.
If you're looking towards countries that employ more of like a socialist model where everyone is being served, like
more of a socialist model, are they going to start talking about fucking Scandinavia? I've had so many fucking leftists. Every time I'm like, well, what's an example of a socialist country that's like doing really well and has like flourished because of it? And they're always like Sweden or like Denmark. They're not fucking socialist countries, bro. They have like, they use more principles, sure, but that's still a mixture. It's still like a capitalist economy. They haven't, what's the word? They haven't seized the means of production. That's the one. I don't know.
Scandinavian countries, for example, that do emphasize a lot on women's health, and they have much.
Scandi countries are social democracies. I mean, yeah, but they're not like socialist countries, and people love to claim them as that when it's just not true.
Lower everyone is being capitalist viewpoint as well. If you're looking towards countries that employ more of like a socialist model where everyone is being served.
And I'm sorry, by the way, it's so weird that so many like trans and like queer people are far leftists. It makes sense to a certain extent, and it would make sense why more of them would be liberal, because trans people trend towards being in poverty for a whole lot of reasons. But like communists, socialists, like anarchists, that's like specialist shit. That takes a bit more than just most of us being kind of poor. I'm sorry, it does. Like that's where you get into the kind of the social like grooming shit, which again I need to look more into, because it's very, very difficult to really examine, you know.
Like Scandinavian countries, for example, that do emphasize a lot on women's health, and they have much lower birth mortality.
So I would have voted reform. Fair enough. I don't like Nigel Farage personally. I respect him in the sense that for someone that was never in power, yeah, like for someone who's never been in power, like Farage has gotten a lot of what he wanted, like us leaving the EU and stuff like that. But I don't know, I'm a center left, if anything. I'm not a right winger. So I get called a right winger like constantly, but that's kind of to be expected. So
rates, these societies, everyone is living much happier lives versus under capitalist models are
social grooming, lol. I mean, like I said, that's something I need to look more into. That's just whatever phrase I'm using. I'm not like coining anything here. Like, I think you're taking me a bit too seriously. I mean, isn't that a bit of a red scare out of people being interested in theory and holding alternative political ideals? I mean, I'm not trying to red scare anyone. I'm just saying that it's interesting that trans people specifically get into these groups so much. Like, it's weird that we have so specific ideologies because we seem to disengage from like the from the rest of society, which is not good. And it leaves the rest of us that do want to engage with society like high and dry because no one's got any advice for each other except that society fucking hates us, which is not even true.
Are even the richest people very happy?
90s lefty. Oh yeah, I guess the kind of thing that someone like Carl Benjamin would say he is, maybe. I don't know if I agree, but I think I know what kind of person you mean.
But a lot of people below them are struggling. In models where we're not really taking care of each other and we're not distributing our wealth very well, no one's really that happy. So really it shows that humans are
We're not distributing our wealth very well. I don't know. It's so vague. Like, it's so easy to spout all this shit off and convince people who don't really think about it. I used to be the same. I would have listened to a lot of this stuff and be like, yeah, that's really good. We should be doing all this. But I wouldn't really be engaging with what that actually means and what that actually entails, you know?
community-oriented beings. We thrive under community care and community love.
We really want to dive deeper into trans menstruation, and the relationship that transgender and non-binary people have towards menstruation is complicated, to say the least. Can you share what this experience has looked like for you as a trans man over the years?
So the relationship that trans and gender diverse or gender non-binary or non-binary folks have with menstruation can be very simple, but also very complex. Simple in the fact of not all trans and non-binary folks are going to feel dysphoric about menstruation. Some folks are so happy about menstruation.
Okay, I'm bored now. I don't know. I might make a segment out of that because that drove me up the wall. I'm pretty bored. Like, they say plenty of stuff that's like true enough. Like, and if you lay it out, it's like, yeah, we probably could stand to be like 1% more inclusive by using these words instead. But it's just, how do you propose to actually get more people to do that beyond just hectoring them? It doesn't seem like people want any of this, right? You know, my BRB has been on. Yeah, it just doesn't seem like people want any of this shit. And it seems like people are starting to push back against it because to them, they don't see like identity. They just see men and women, and that's just what they see. Like, you're not entitled to them seeing you as how you see yourself. Who doesn't want this? Who is pushing back? Like, everyone that complains whenever there's like a new silly phrase out there, like pregnant people, all the people that don't like using they, them. Who is this mythical person you were speaking for? Well, those kind of people, you know, people that feel like their speech is compelled when being told what pronouns to use instead of using what they feel they should be using as the person speaking. There's a lot of people that feel this way. Sure, you see some loons on Twitter, hardened transphobes, Daily Mail readers, other freaks. But it's nice that you call other people freaks. Like, it kind of, no wonder people are going to call you freaks in that case, you know? But yeah, I don't know. People feel that way. I'm sorry. Like, I've had conversations with people that don't seem like any of those things, but are just like cynical about it because they don't really know much. And what I find is, instead of soying out, when I just kind of talk to them and explain a couple of things that make sense, they at least kind of moderate a bit. But that's not what people want to do for the most part. They just want to scream at each other. A lot of these trans leftists, all they want to do is monologue at people and be educated by them, when most of these people really don't have anything worth educating anyone on. Let's be real. Your average person doesn't read or engage with any of these things. Yes, exactly. So they're probably not going to call you they. And if you say, no, I'm a they, and they're like, well, I don't believe in that, what are you supposed to do? This is just what some people are like. I'm sorry. Go outside occasionally, please, I beg you. You think the average cis person is a lot more hateful than they are? You don't even know what I'm fucking saying, okay? You have absolutely no idea what I'm fucking saying. So, I don't know. Listen, your average person is not going to say, I don't believe in they, lol. Well, some people... Shut the fuck up. Some people, like... Some people don't like it, I'm sorry. It is what it is. What are you supposed to do when around one of those people? Like, if they're not going to call you your pronouns, then they're not going to call you your pronouns. And you don't know who that's going to be. It could be anyone. Some people, but they aren't worth listening to. Why are any of these people worth listening to? What are they saying that's so important? Oh, maybe we should call people with ovaries. What are they saying that's so important? Shun them, walk away, ostracize them. Well, you like ostracizing people. That's your whole fucking shtick. Because you all are like the least woke motherfuckers in the world. You love to ostracize someone. Anyone that says anything wrong, you're fucking straight on them. No, you can't be saying that. Shame, 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 shame. How come fat shaming doesn't work, but bigot shaming does work apparently? Anyway, I'm going to move on. We're going to watch Ethan is Online. Yes, if people are saying stupid, hateful shit, then they fuck around and find out. AKA the other person, don't tolerate a gross spine. Tolerate what? I get called a he maybe like once every 6 months. I just don't really give a shit. Like, don't tolerate what? Don't tolerate being called a woman when you were born female. Oh, I'm sorry. It's just how most people talk. Plenty of people just don't know anything about like trans stuff. And not everyone is like willing to change the way they talk for you, or is unable to really like remember this kind of shit and isn't going to sit at home practicing the way that those fucking people on that podcast were saying they should. I don't believe in they. Transsexuals for men and women, transvestites dress the opposite, transsexuals look like opposite sex. Like, they has some uses. I know it like literally does in terms of like if you don't know the gender of someone you're speaking to about, or if you're trying to preserve anonymity, for example. So it does have use. It is like appropriated from that. I guess like I will call someone they if they want me to, and I usually just use it like on all of the gender people because I don't know what they want to be called. I'm not going anywhere further than that, like no ZZ or any of that shit. But if they don't want to treat others with respect, don't deal with them. Well, what's not treating someone as respect with not seeing fucking non-binary and not knowing what that is and just seeing people as men and women? Who wants to extend olive branches to chuds? Waste of everyone's time. Okay, then carry on in your shitty little echo chamber where you don't talk to anyone that disagrees with you on anything. Like, have fun with that. Like, because the problem is the way you define like treating others with respect could mean so many different things. It's fine to be ignorant. But it depends where you're going with this. Like, people will use that to justify someone's a fucking cat. They're pretending they're being a cat. Is that Frida? No, that's Ethan is Online. Frida's somewhere else. Oh, Sotal. I don't know. Actually, it could be. I'm not gonna accuse anyone. There's a difference between someone who honestly doesn't know better and someone being bigoted. Well, yeah, obviously. But what's bigoted? If you have an opinion that gender identity isn't a thing, why is that bigoted? I wasn't even saying otherwise. I don't know where that's come from, but sure. I mean, who's accusing you of being a fool? Frida has accused me of, well, she hasn't said much in terms of that, but like, she's yeah, I don't know. She seems like the kind of person I would actually love to do some kind of fucking like podcast with where we just intensely disagree on shit, because I think that would be hilarious. I'd love to find like a way more woke, like gender positive, like trans person like that's capable of a bit of banter, you know? I think that'd be hilarious. What's bigoted? Look around the world and find out. Answer my fucking question. What's fucking bigoted? What's bigoted, literally, about not believing that gender identity is a thing, ergo non-binary isn't really a thing, and that you just have sex? What's bigoted about thinking that? I'm not saying I think that, but what's bigoted about it? Not look around the world, not do your own research, answer it, or shut the fuck up. What's bigoted by saying that all trans people... Okay, how long can you mute people for? You aren't welcome here if you're going to talk like that. I never said all trans people are delusional liars. I never said that. That's not what I was saying. So if you can't engage with the shit that I'm saying, then it kind of suggests to me that your beliefs are based on complete bullshit and that you don't know why you think anything that you think. You've just been fucking force-fed this by weird people that are older than you that think the same stupid shit. You can't answer. You have to rephrase it. All trans people are delusional liars. That's what those phrases mean. You're being too... No. What I'm saying is, someone doesn't believe in gender identity, which is not saying all trans people are delusional liars. No one said that. Yes, that is their social media. Well, no, it's not. You've just applied that to that. You're just saying, well, actually, what you're saying means this. What if they didn't mean that? Why doesn't the person speaking get any agency in that situation? Why is it that I can't make any criticisms without other people expanding on it to say, well, when you're saying this, that means this? Everyone knows it, even the people saying it. You're supremely fucking stupid. Can I just tell you? Only you're out of the loop because you're too literal-minded. Oh, okay. Okay. So if I happen to actually mean the literal version of that, because I am literally minded, thank you. If I actually mean the literal version of what if someone doesn't believe in gender identity and therefore doesn't think non-binary is real, why is that bigoted? Then you are literally taking my words and changing them. So by your own definition, that makes no fucking sense. You're making no fucking sense. Do you understand? Those words don't exist in a vacuum. That doesn't mean that anytime someone says that, that's what it means. I'm sorry. You've been fucking brainwashed by some utter retard. Hang on, how do I get on Twitch? Because I'm not letting you get away with this. I'm sorry, Psotal. You've come at me a lot on YouTube and Twitter, and we have, it's fun, I love it, but we live in a context. Well, whatever context you live in is insane and does not exist, because everything you're saying is insane. You can't just tell someone, oh, there's a chat on Twitch as well as YouTube. I'm on Restream. Make sure it's silent. Yeah. You can't just say, when someone says something, actually, no, you mean this. That's just diverting the conversation to a conversation you want to have. Have this vid to enjoy. I can't get any links. You're going to have to send it to me on Whispers. Okay, how long is the stream going to be? Probably a few more hours. All right, I tell you what, come back tomorrow. You're really stupid. You need to get your programming sorted. If you want me to do that for you, fine, come say hi. I will, but you're in a fucking cult and you need to get out of it. Have 6 hours. Thank you.